and welcome to everyone in the audience here with us this morning in Popeyes, Eton Centris, and everyone joining us via Zoom. I'd like to give a special shout out to Miss Lorraine Badoy for joining us in the Zoom stream. My name is Daniel Long, and I will be your moderator for today's forum entitled Coral Conspiracy and Philippines-China Relations. Um, the speakers joining us here are my fellow colleagues from Asian Century Philippines and a Filipina scholar joining us from Beijing, whom I will introduce shortly. These are the real leading experts in the field of geopolitics in international relations. The topics that will be discussed are the alleged Chinese harvesting of corals in the Rosol Reef in the West Philippine Sea or South China Sea, and an update on Philippines-China relations. Before that, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of our media friends here with us today. Mr. Al Galang, Mr. Artson, Mr. Jimmy Nabor, Mr. Annalie Labor, Mr. Teddy Pelaez, and everyone else joining us here today. Our first speaker is Herman Camentong Laurel. He's a Filipino columnist, writer, and geopolitics expert. He's the president of Asian Century Philippine Strategic Studies Institute. He's the host of an online podcast, Power Things and Opinion Online at Global Talk News Radio, streamed on YouTube and Facebook. Let us welcome Camentong for his opening statements.
Magandang umaga po sa lahat. May slight delay ang audio, but we'll be adjusting it. No? Okay, it's better. No? Maraming salamat sa pagdalo po ng napakarami po dito sa ating Zoom at dito in our live revenue venue po dito sa Popeyes Centris sa Eton. So nagpapasalamat din tayo dito sa mga kabataan, kararating lang po, who will be assisting us in distributing materials. They'll be wearing the anti-war t-shirts para maalala po natin na ang ating ginagawa po rito ay laban sa tinutulak na gera ng mga bansang kanluran. Baka nakakalimutan ng iba, nasa likod po ng lahat ng mga nangyayari sa loob ng bayan po natin, ang background po nito ay yung pandaigdigang labanan ng mga puwersa para sa kapayapaan sa mundo at economic development, meaning kaunlaran, pangkabuhayan ng mundo. At yung puwersa, itong nakaraang 500 taon sa kasalukuyan na pinamumunuan ng Estados Unidos na nagtutulak ng giyera. Yung isang giyera po na pinakabagong kanilang nilunsad po, magdadalawang taon na po sa Ukraine. Anong nangyayari sa Ukraine? Kalahating milyon na ang Ukrainian soldiers ang patay. Doble niyan ang mga wounded. Doble niyan ang mga napilay na, nawalan ng mga paa, mga braso, mga wounded. Hindi po ito napapag-usapan dito sa atin, lalo-lalo na para maunawaan ng ating masa, ng ating middle class, na ito ay nangyayari sa mundo. At tayo ay hinihigop po dito ng mga pwersa dyan sa kanluran tulad ng Estados Unidos. Yan ang kahulugan po ng mga base militar po dito na sa kasalukuyang administrasyon ay pinayagan na naman ulit. At nung simula po ay pinag-usapan 4 na dagdag na base militar. Ngayon, dumadami na po, hindi na natin mabilang kung ilan ang idadagdag nilang mga base militar. Tayo ay isang hamak na research group lang po, Asian Century Philippines Strategic Studies Institute. Itong lahat po na ito ay ating pinag-aaralan. At itong ating mga napapag-aralan dapat mabatid po ng ating masang Pilipino, ng ating mga middle class. Dahil po sa mga nangyayari po ngayon, itong mga nakaraang buwan, lalo na itong nakaraang 1 buwan na ito, lumalabas na puro lang mga tensyon ang ating nababasa sa mga media, mga mula sa mga taong gobyerno po natin. Babanggitin natin mamaya yung mga pangalan. Kaya po tayo itong araw na to ay nagpapaliwanag po sa ating audience diyan sa Zoom. Marami po na babasahin sana namin ng mga pangalan pero napakarami po. Mamaya naman na lang siguro pagka may oras na po tayo. At siyempre itong mga media na kasama po natin, mga photographers. So maraming salamat sa pagdalo nila. Ako ay may dalawang papers po na ipinakalat po dito, 20 lang kopya. I hope it will suffice for the audience, no? But mainly it's for the media, no? So yung mga hindi media po na mga bisita po natin, if you are holding some, please give it up in favor of the media. Meron akong 1-week-old paper tungkol sa coral devastation. At importanteng maunawaan ito dahil po ito po anong feature ko po sa harap? Isang larawan ng New York Times report ng 2018. Na sinasabi ang coral devastation, ang isa sa pinakamalaking dahilan ay ang dynamite fishing at cyanide fishing. Now, hindi ko na pahahabain ng paliwanag dahil nasa paper na to, na nasa kamay na po ng ating mga media. Our Zoom audience can access this. Makikita po ninyo itong artikulong ito sa Asian Century Philippines ating website ng news and views, analysis din po. Ito po ay ma-access nyo sa Asian Century PH, asiancenturyph.com. asiancenturyph.com. Marami pang ibang mga artikulo diyan tulad mga sulat po ni Ana Malindogoy na guest po natin mamaya. Si Ginoong Ado Paglinawan dito sa kanan ko po, napakaraming artikulo po diyan, no? So this is my first article. At pangatlong dahilan, totoong dahilan sa coral depletion po sa mga lugar po na malapit sa Pilipinas, mga reef tulad ng Rasul Reef or Iroquois Reef at marami pang ibang Tubataha at so on, ay yung global warming po. Dahil umiinit po ang karagatan, nagiging acidic po ang maraming karagatan na hindi po maganda sa coral reefs. So ang epekto niyan, marami pong namamatay na coral din dyan. Kaya po yung pinagsasabi po ni Tariela, ni Commodore Tariela ng Philippine Coast Guard ay isang walang katuturan. Para lang po na sinasabi niya na ang Chinese Maritime Militia daw ang may kasalanan. Walang katuturan po yun, walang saysay po yun. Dahil ang ating mga problema sa coral depletion sa South China Sea, sa mga karagatan po ng Pilipinas, sa mga shorelines po, sa mga malapit sa shorelines or dalampasigan ng Pilipinas, ay matagal na pong problema yan. Kaya ako po sinight ang American source, hindi Chinese source, hindi Filipino source, American source, na ang malaking problema po sa corals po natin ay sariling gawa po natin at hindi natin pinagbibintangan ng mga mangingisda. Dahil isa sa pinakamahirap na sektor ng ating lipunan ng mga mangingisda. Bakit? Sa kapabayaan po ng gobyerno ng Pilipinas na ilang administrasyon na. Kapabayaan po ng Philippine Coast Guard sa kanilang pagkabigo o pagkapabaya sa pagsasagawa po ng laban sa illegal fishing na gamit ang dynamite at cyanide fishing. At dahil po nagpipilit ang Armed Forces of the Philippines ngayon na magsalita tungkol sa issue na ito na wala naman sa jurisdiction po nila, pati ang Armed Forces of the Philippines ating pinagbibintangan ngayon din. Dito sa kapabayaan nila, dito sa pagpapatrolya po, dahil meron naman talagang mga illegal coral harvesting. Pero hindi lang po China yan, mga private fishing groups or poachers Nasa balita po yan for the past years. Vietnamese poachers and Filipino harvesting tons and tons of giant clams for export. Ano? Yan po ay dapat responsibilidad ng Philippine Coast Guard na kontrolin. Ay sa totoo, kahit na ating pinagbibintangan ng Philippine Coast Guard, limitado din ng Philippine Coast Guard. Dahil sa kapabayaan naman sa ekonomiya ng ating pamahalaan all over the many decades, na ang ekonomiya natin po, hindi naman kayang i-sustain ang effective industrial requirements for a good economy, for a good livelihood for our fishermen, and for the equipment our Philippine Coast Guard needs. Kaya po itong ginagawa ni Commodore Tariela na to na nililihis sa isang kasinungalingan na pag pinagbibintangan daw ang China ngayon. This is a diversion. And this is part of the US-inspired anti-China threat campaign. Walang katotohanan po yan dahil again, uulitin natin, yung problema ng coral depletion po natin, ilang dekada na po nangyayari yan. Bakit pagpipilit nila na isa lang ang source daw at ang China daw? Kasi po ang pakay po ng Amerikano ay pag-awayin ng Pilipino at ang Chino na hindi naman sila magtatagumpay. Kasi po 1,200 taon na po ang pagkakaibigan, pagkakapatid nga ng Pilipinas at ng China. In fact, just a few days ago, ika-600 taon na namang anibersaryo ng bisita ni Sultan of Sulu Paduka Batara sa China. Si Princess Jaisal Kirampo ay kababalik lang po galing sa China sa kanyang pagbisita po doon sa puntod po ng ninuno niya na si Sultan Batara. So yan ay mga ebidensya sa kasaysayan po natin. So this is the first paper. Sino ba talaga ang may kasalanan? Pag nagtuturo po yung si Tariela sa China, 4 na daliri po niya nakaturo sa sarili niya. So let us not get diverted. My second paper po is more current. Itong hindi pa nga napapublish, baka mamayang hapon mapublish na natin sa ating Asian Century Philippines website. Ang pamagat po ay Coral Reef Grief. Pagluluksa sa coral reef natin, anong totoong mga causes? So, hindi ko na po babasahin din dahil nga may paper po tayong ikinalat na para malinaw po ang mga issues. But babasahin ko lang ilang mga bahagi. Philippine Coast Guard, AFP, China US Global Campaign. And lahat po na laganap ngayon na anti-China campaign dito sa atin at global media ay konektado doon sa nakaraang taon, 2022. The US Congress approved a $500 million additional funding for a law they call the America Competes Act. Yung $500 million po na yon ay para lang po sa anti-China information campaign. And ramdam na ramdam po natin dito sa Pilipinas, sa mga vloggers, sa mga trolls, sa sari-sari po, sa mga PR groups, na talagang lumalakas po ang dating ng mga funding po dito. Pati po yung mga boses po na nagpapaliwanag ng mga tanong lang po tulad ni Senator Padilla ay pinuputakti ng mga kalaban po niya na ayaw po marinig na ilang mga question tungkol sa katotohanan. Dahil po, hindi ba, si Senator Padilla ang nagtanong kay Tariela, bakit may US Air Force Poseidon surveillance plane pa? Kasabay po nung ayungin deliveries ng Philippine Coast Guard ng pagkain. At iba pa. Bakit may US warship na umaaligid-aligid? For that, Senator Robin Padilla is being attacked by various sources, including Tariela, including mga what we have learned to call as the dilawan. Bakit ko nasabi yan? Yung isang lumabas po yun sa social media program ni Christian Esguerra, si Ronald Llamas. Ano? Sinait pa isang mali na kaso. Kasi sabi ni Ginoong Robin Padilla, walang escalation ng tension between the Philippines and China sa South China Sea nung panahon ni Presidente Duterte. Sabi nitong Llamas na si Robin Padilla dapat i-check ang datos niya or information. Tulad daw ng Jember accident. Hindi niya tinawag na accident. Ang tinawag niya po ito ay gawa-gawa ng China. But we know in 2022, yung Jember was a civilian merchant marine accident. Hindi naman yan political. Siyempre merong mga elementong tinutulak na political yan. But lumabas naman after investigation na tinanggap naman ng China at nagbayad po ang kumpanya sa China ng 6 million pesos sa damage. That was an occasion to celebrate the cooperation of the legal authority of China and the Philippines at nang nakinabang po ang ating Filipino fishermen. Hindi lang po yung formal 6 million peso na damages paid by the Chinese company, but I think almost an equal amount came from the Filipino-Chinese community to emphasize the goodwill between China and Chinese Filipinos and the Filipinos. Kung sasalaysay lang po natin ang ilang taon ng tulong ng Chinese Filipinos sa lipunan po natin, sa industriya, sa ekonomiya, hindi po tayo matatapos itong araw na to. But also, this narrative na laban sa China, tulad nung sinasabi na walang usapan po tungkol sa BRP Sierra Madre. Well, new evidence keeps coming out na merong usapan ang China at ng Pilipinas tungkol dito sa Sierra Madre in Ayungin Shoal. Now, the latest discovery sent to us by Madam Ana Malindoguy is an inquiry report in 2014, if I'm not mistaken, let me check. May 29, 2013. At doon sa report po ng inquiry na yun, ito po, I'm quoting directly from that report. Gasmin said, he assured Ma, the Chinese ambassador at the time, that the Philippines would not build structures there in the Ayungin Shoal. Quote again ito, we will not violate the agreement not to construct new structures. We told them we're only bringing supplies for our troops there, like food, like water. There will also be a rotation of troops because we can't put our men there permanently or they'll go crazy. Ito po, report, hindi ng pro-China, hindi ng kundi ng Inquirer. So this is an official news report prior to any of these problems. Sa makatuwid, may modus vivendi. Modus vivendi, ibig sabihin, may practice na ang Pilipinas at China tungkol dyan sa BRP Sierra Madre. Kaya, ang China naman po, 24 na taon, ginagampanan po ang tungkulin nila na wala pong problemang payagan ng Chinese Coast Guard. You can dispute that, but I'm just stating the fact na pagdating sa pagkain, tubig, gamot, mga pangangailangan sa kalusugan, kabuhayan po o buhay ng ating mga marino po doon, wala pong obstruction ng China. Pero may usapan, walang construction. Kasi may dispute nga dyan. And para doon sa hindi pa po nalalaman po to, meron din tayong ebidensya galing from an objective third party, non-sympathetic to China pa na source, na sinasabi, may pangako si Erap Estrada na tatanggalin ang BRP Sierra Madre mula sa lugar niya pag nagkaroon ng pagkakataon, pagtitining ng panahon, and so on. Alam natin si Estrada natanggal sa pwesto. Ito po ay nasa aklat po ni Gregory Polling na kanyang pinublish po noong 2022, if I'm not mistaken. Yun, a 2022 book by Gregory Polling, one of the U.S. foremost China-bashing analysts, especially with regard to South China Sea issue. Ano sabi niya? In 1999, it approached Second Thomas Scholl, blah, blah, blah. Highlighted po sa paper po sa harap po ninyo. President Estrada, feigning in their ignorance, promised to tow the vessel away as soon as it could be safely floated off the reef. Kaya po sabi ko po rito, hindi po mababalik po ang respeto ng international community sa diplomasya po ng Pilipinas hanggat hindi ayusin po ito. Now, when I say the international community, hindi lang Amerika at yung mga ilan-ilan na bansa ng European Union. I'm talking about the 194 countries of the United Nations. So, well, there are more, no, but you can read it. So, I will stop at that. Dahil po ang kasama po nating si Ado Paglinawan has also an elaboration on on his analysis of the news content the past week on this coral reef and the real causes for it. No, but before that, I'd like to open at least to 3 questions if there are any.
Yes.
Any questions?
Any questions
May
from our media
microphone
friends
ba
po?
tayo doon sa kabila? Ito na lang microphone. Mary.
2 to 3 questions po
Mary.
from our media friends here.
Kung may mga questions. Meron? Kung wala,
Please raise your hands if you have any questions.
kung wala, we can move on.
Yes. Please introduce yourself po.
Walang question? Wala, no? Okay.
All right. Let's move on. All right. Thank you, Kamentong, for your documented research
By
on
the way,
the.
yung mga kabataan natin, no, nakasuot po sila ng no to war, no to EDCA.
And let us welcome them.
Yung isa, hindi na kabataan yun.
And let us welcome them, our youth. All right, thank you, Kamentong, for your documented research on the coral situation in the Roseau Reef. Next, let us welcome Ado Paglinawan. He's a Filipino journalist and political analyst and activist. He's the anchor of a program, Ang Maestro, on the Katipunan channel on YouTube. He's the author of 3 books, A Problem for Every Solution, No Vaccine for a Virus Called Racism, and he has a new book entitled The Poverty of Power. Let us welcome Kaado for his opening statements.
Good morning. With the help of Joshua here, I would like to present my case. We're readying the projector. At any rate, the title of my presentation is Anatomy of Fake News, the American Monster Media at Work. Actually, it should have been entitled The Anatomy of Fraudulent News. Day 1, September 16, nagkaroon po ng Saturday News Forum with Ariel Ayala and Ernesto Hilario, kung saan a few weeks before that ay gines din ang mga tanyag na mga American talking heads na si Jay Batumbakal, Renato De Castro at Richard Heydarian. Ano po ang buod ng presentasyon nilang ito? Kawawa namang Admiral Carlos dahil siya ay nagamit. I am sure, in fairness to the general, he did not intend any politics. Sa unang balita, yung version ng Rappler ang aking kukunin, ang headline, AFP suspects China of massive coral harvesting in the West Philippine Sea. September 16, 2020. AFP Western Command Chief Vice Admiral Alberto Carlos disclosed and raised alarm over what they suspect to be massive illegal harvesting in the Rosul Reef located in the West Philippine Sea. Ito pong balitang ito, nilabas ng Philippine Star, pag-aari ng broadsheet ni Manny Pangilinan, na alam naman natin na siya ang major actor sa Forum Energy at Philex Mining na may interest sa gas and oil exploration diyan sa Recto Reef. 1:53 ng hapon. American Liberal Television News, CNN, rewrote it at 4:19 p.m. Nilabas ng ABS-CBN ang kanilang version ng 4:45 p.m. Halos pareho ang content. Pero medyo in-editorialize ng Rappler ang balita. Alam ba naman natin na ang Rappler is a private website owned by the Omidyar Network and funded by the U.S. government-created National Endowment for Democracy at funded din ng Soros Open Society Foundation. Naglabas ng 7:30 na halos ng gabi. Bakit ko sinasabi na ang kawawang admiral ay nagamit sa propaganda? Unang-una, yung report ay hindi base sa katotohanan. It was not a fact, but on an admitted conjecture of a military officer whose incredibility is the only basis here, and we are only relying on his word bilang isang kagalang-galang na sundalo ng ating sandatahang lakas. Carlos has not presented any confirmed evidence of presence of the coral and the status of the coral formation before they left the scene. It was only when they returned to the place after the Chinese fishing boats were there and kaagad tinatawag nila itong milisya. Ewan ko kung naiintindihan nila kung anong diferensya between a fishing boat and a militia and a military ship or a coast guard. Quotation. When they left, we sent out our divers to do an underwater survey and nakita namin na wala ng corals. The corals were destroyed, and then there were debris. However, the Westcom chief, while making a very slanderous accusation, is quick to say that they were not definitely asserting that the Chinese were harvesting corals. There were indications. No, next slide. There were indications that strongly suggest the occurrence of such activities. Any two-bit lawyer can assert this reeks of circumstantial evidence. It can even be assumed it was the Westcom that harvested the corals, or the fishermen that had paid the Philippine Navy. Alam naman natin yan na dyan pa sa Aloha Hotel sila nagtatransaksyon. Before they left the controversial location. Bakit kawawa naman si Admiral Carlos? Because he may have even admitted it was his troops' withdrawal earlier that was at fault here. Etong statement niya. There was considerable amount of time na walang swarming doon because of our presence there. We'd like to maintain 100, 365 days a year, but because of the weather, limited resources, our troops have to go back to port to refuel, to take some rest. Carlos added. Tandaan po natin mga kabansa that this is a budget hearing. Sino ba talaga? Ano ba talaga ang problema? Coral harvesting? Swarming? Pwede rin the weather. And since this is a budget hearing, lack of funds and resources. Kasi yun ang implication. We have to go back to port to refuel, to take some rest. So, nung nawala doon ang ating mga armed forces, saka nagkaroon ng problema. Day 2. China possibly using harvested coral as decor jewelry according to experts. Anak ng pating, sinalsal na yung balita. GMA Integrated News, with all due respects. Maritime law expert Jay Batumbakal said there was a possibility that corals harvested from the parts were being used by China as materials for decorations, ornaments, jewelry. They use it instead of ivory to make statues and ornaments. They use the corals to make jewelry, among other things. Grabe. Nasa alahas na tayo. Hindi pa nga napapatunayan kung ano yung nangyari doon. Sino si Batumbakal? Director ho yan ng UP Institute for Maritime Affairs and Law of the Sea. An adjunct of the Strat-based Albert de Rosario Institute that is funded by the Washington, D.C.-based Center for Strategic and International Studies, the main sponsor of American perspectives in the South China Sea disputes. Ito pong Institute di Batumbakal is the counterpart agent of the Asian Maritime Transparency Institute. Tuwihong magsasalita si J. Tariela, lagi humine-mention yan na Maritime Transparency Institute. Sino ang leadership nito? Greg Pauling, CSIS, Harrison Pretat, CSIS, Jared Topola, CSIS. Lahat ho ng nasa advisory group. Hindi ko na babasahin isa-isa. Lahat-lahat. Taga CSIS. Kilala ko po ang CSIS. 7 taon po akong nanungkulan sa embassy natin sa Washington from 86 to 93. By the way, yan pong CSIS is the neo-conservative organization that removed President Ferdinand Marcos Sr. Pero hindi na tayo pupunta doon. Ibang storya na yon. Day 3. Confirm na by Chinese militia. Ang PCG ang Coast Guard daw, ay nag-conduct ng covert missions conducted from August 9 to September 11. Anong finding? The presence of 33 Chinese maritime militia vehicles at Rusul Reef and Sabina Shoal. Ang finding daw nila na may mga barko doon. Covert mission, ay na-affirm daw ng precision ng data ng recent maritime patrol carried out by the BRP Sidangan and the BRP Cabra in the past few weeks. The PCG undertook an extensive underwater survey of the seabed during the covert operations. Bakit hindi sila naglabas dito? Bakit Armed Forces of the Philippines West Coast ba naglabas dito? Ibig mong sabihin, nandun ang swarming. Nag-diving sila sa ilalim ng dagat. Anyway, yan ang sabi ni Tariela, mamaya malalaman natin because he will issue a disclaimer to himself. The same day, lumabas na ito sa Radio Free Asia. No? A spokesman. Wow, international figure na si Tariela. Blames Chinese alleged destructive fishing practices in South China for breakdown of the environment. Sinasite, nagkaroon sila ng undercover operations from August 9 to September 11. And findings lang naman nila, 33 militia be. Nag-underwater survey daw sila. Ang alam kong underwater survey ay yung ginawa ng Westcom nung sila'y bumalik doon. Anyway, ito rin ho ang kineri ng Radio Free Asia. Hindi ko na babasahin. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Radio Free Asia is a United States government-funded private non-profit corporation operating a news service that broadcasts radio programs and publishes online news, preceded by the CIA-operated Committee for Free Asia. It was established by the U.S. Congress in an act in 1994. So this is a creation of the U.S. government. It is funded and supervised by the U.S. Agency for Global Media, which just received $500 million for media outlets from the America Competes Act. $500 million for this year, $300 million for last year. Maybe next year, 1 billion na yan. All right, next slide, please. Sino ba si Tadela? Well, noong pong January 5, 2004, naglabas ang PhilStar ng balita na si Jay Tariela ay nasipa sa Philippine Military Academy for cheating in an exam. Ayan po ang documentation. Mandaraya itong taong to. Paano nakapasok ito sa ating Coast Guard? Eh sinipa na ito ng PMA. Ito ba mga tao ni Presidente Marcos? Recently, nagpunta po ito sa Washington, D.C. at sa kanyang sariling salita, I am incredibly grateful to the East-West Center to pursue my Philippine Alliance Fellowship. Tandaan niyo po yan, maririnig niyo yan. Every now and then, U.S.-Philippine Alliance. Even though I will only, this is a remarkable chance for me. Ito, inamin niya, to connect with key government officials and policy experts in Washington to expose China's aggressive actions and gray zone tactics in the West Philippine Sea. Facebook page po mo yan. So madalit sabi, Tariela is a deep throat penetration agent for purposes of black propaganda. Huwag na tayo magbulahan dito. Anyway, Diyos, handa mo na yung ating dalawang video cuts. And I hope maayos nating may palalabas ito. Could you please play one after the other? Habang hinahanda ni Joshua yung video cut, dalawa. Gusto ko lang sabihin na para bang ako ay nawawala na ng pag-asa. Lalo na nung marinig ko si Francis Tolentino na kine-claim niya na ang US Navy Poseidon daw ay hindi military equipment. Non-combatant daw yun. And he is saying this in the floor of the Senate. Pangalawa, so ang Poseidon, hindi military equipment. Pero ang Chinese Coast Guard, military equipment daw. Harapan panggagago na po ang ginagawa sa atin. Yun naman si Subiri, nakamakailan lamang, ay naging bisita ni Victoria Nuland sa Washington, D.C. At mukhang napangakuan ng napakalaking kontrata dahil dadalhin daw ng Amerika dito ang manufacturing industry ng mga armas dito sa Pilipinas. Eh pagbalik ko ni Subiri, ay maputi pang balat kaysa sa glutathione. Ano sabi niya sa hearing? Inamin niya, nang kung tayo sasagupas sa China, 3 araw daw, wala na tayo. Mag-guerrilla warfare na raw tayo. Mukhang hindi nag-iisip. Saan tayo mag-guerrilla warfare? At bakit siya natatakot sa China? Ganong ang isyong pinag-uusapan ay Taiwan. Alam ba niya kasi na itong mga EDCA sites na ito ay magmamagnet ng gera papunta sa ating teritoryo? Pero anong guerrilla tactics natin dito? Kung magkakaroon po mga kabansa ng gera dito sa atin at tayo bilang proxy ng China ay lalaban sa China para sa Amerika, wala ho tayong makikita a single Chinese troop dito. Wala tayong at lalong wala tayong makikita na a single boots on the ground ng Amerika rito. Puro ho, missile at bomba na lang ang darating dito. 2023 na, Senator Subiri. Ano ba pinagsasabi mo na Mabini Bonifacio, mag-guerrilla warfare tayo rito? Eh, sinong gigirilyahin natin dito? Baka kayong patayin ng mga tao dahil sa katraidoran ninyo. Well, anyway, ito po yung video.
issue. Ayon sa opisyal, wala na niyang napila sa oras ng braso. Ngunit nakikipag-ugnayan na sila sa mga eksperto upang matiyak. If you're going to ask me kung meron ba tayong naaktuhan ng Chinese fighter militia vessels na pinapatay nila ang Cora, activities nila at one nila dyan, we don't have any, but in terms of circumstances, that's the only thing we are sure for now. Another panahon na tumambay sila dyan. When we did, right after that, when we did the underwater survey, ito rin natin na.
Para ho sinabi ni Tariela, nagsinungaling ako pero hindi ako nagsisinungaling. Pakiulit nga yung kay Tariela. Si Carlos sinabi magbe-verify pa kami. Si Tariela, eto sabi.
We're going to ask me kung meron ba tayong naaktuhan ng Chinese Foreign Militia vessels na pinapatay nila for civilian coordination. We don't have any, but in terms of territorial success, that's the only thing we are sure for now. Na noong panahon na tumambay sila dyan, when we did right after, when we did the underwater survey, ito yung ating the issue.
With that, I rest my case. Salita na ako si Tariela. Hindi ko na daragdagan. Actually, sinabi niya, simple lang. Actually, sinabi ho ni Tariela, simple lang. Don't trust me. Don't trust me. Just print what I say, which is not true. Ayan po ang message niya sa media. Isang malaking kabalbalan, kahangalan, kabalintunan, kasinungalingan, kalokohan, katarantaduhan ng Philippine Coast Guard. Embodied by Tariela. Bakit pag si Admiral Balilo ang nagsasalita? Puro katotohanan. Pa ito si Tariela pag nagsasalita, puro ebak ng kabayo. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Kado, for that very important expose of the situation with the coral reefs and showing us the real picture behind the headlines. Let us welcome next Professor Ana Malindog Oy. She's joining us via Zoom in China. She is a cum laude graduate of political science at the University of the Philippines. She is a researcher, writer, academic, and consultant. She's a political and geopolitical analyst and vice president for external affairs of the Asian Century Philippine Strategic Studies Institute. Let us welcome Professor Ana Malindog Oy for her opening statements.
To my fellow panel of speakers, members of the media, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I extend my warm greetings to all. In recent headlines, we have witnessed the Philippines' intention to initiate legal proceedings with China concerning allegations of environmental damage, notably coral harvesting within the South China Sea. Specifically, this concerns revolve around the Russo Reef and Skoda Shoal, both of which fall within the Philippines' claim exclusive economic zone. The intended venue for this proceedings is permanent court arbitration of the PCA. In light of this, I firmly believe that it is imperative for the current Philippine administration, led by President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., to engage in a profound contemplation and exercise utmost caution before embarking on yet another legal confrontation with China through the PCA. Foremost among our considerations should be a thorough evaluation of the potential adverse consequences that may arise from such forced action. Equally vital is for the present leadership in the Philippines under President Marcos Jr. to meticulously assess whether the disadvantages outweigh the prospective benefits inherent in pursuing a legal case against China. This evaluation pivots whether such legal proceedings would genuinely accrue concrete advantages for our nation, or whether they could be construed as a strategic maneuver designed to publicly castigate China on the global stage, possibly influenced by external actors or forces seeking to challenge China's political influence and global reputation. Before initiating a second case against China at the Permanent Court of Arbitration, or the PCA, the current Philippine government must consider a host of crucial factors that carry profound implications. It is paramount to acknowledge that international legal proceedings are intricate and protracted endeavors laden with substantial financial burdens for the Philippines. Engaging in a litigation at an international court necessitates a substantial commitment of both financial and human resources. The Philippines would be obliged
to earmark a substantial portion of its financial reserves to cover legal expenses, secure the services of expert advisors, and actively participate in the legal proceedings. This undeniably presents a significant drawback for a nation like the Philippines, which faces constraints in allocating resources to such complex international legal pursuits. Furthermore, when contrasted with China, the Philippines find itself in a comparatively less economically developed position. It is imperative to recognize that the nation grapples with a multitude of pressing domestic challenges, including financial and economic hardships, such as soaring oil and gas prices, a flourishing rice crisis, escalating cost of essential commodities and services, including electricity, and widespread allegations of corruption. Additionally, there are acute concerns regarding the preservation of peace and order, encompassing issues like the fight against illegal drugs, local insurgencies, and a surging crime rate. These multifaceted domestic challenges demand the undivided attention, allocation of resources, and implementation of effective solution by the present administration. Rather than channeling an exorbitant amount of financial resources and time into initiating another legal confrontation with China, redirecting these resources towards addressing pressing domestic issues such as poverty alleviation, healthcare advancement, education advancement, infrastructure development, and the modernization of the agricultural sector holds the potential to catalyze economic growth and enhance social well-being of Filipinos. Nevertheless, the decision to commence legal proceeding at the PCA against China appears to be a diversionary tactic from the paramount domestic issues confronting the nation. These critical challenges continue to loom large, awaiting substantial solution, and regrettably, they remain inadequately addressed despite their profound impact on the country's prosperity and stability. Furthermore, initiating a second legal case against China has the potential to inflame the already delicate diplomatic relation between the two countries. It could further escalate the existing political and geopolitical tensions that simmer between the Philippines and China with far-reaching consequences. Such escalation could cast a shadow over the bilateral trade, investment, and cooperation that the Philippines shares with China, a pivotal economic and the largest trading partner of the Philippines. It's important to emphasize that any disruption in this vital trade relation could inflict considerable harm on Philippine exporters and industries that rely heavily on the Chinese market. The ramification of this could place the Philippines in an economically precarious position with consequences that reach well beyond the sphere of diplomacy. Moreover, it is worth notating that the Philippines could encounter diplomatic isolation if it fails to secure support from our regional or international players for its legal case against China for the second time around. This risk arises from the potential destabilization of the South China Sea and the broader regional security framework or architecture, an outcome that regional countries are keen to avoid in a region where collaboration is essential for addressing challenges such as maritime security, cooperation, and environmental concerns. A strained relationship between the Philippines and China resulting from another possible lawsuit at the PCA filed counterproductive. Consequently, such isolation would curtail the Philippines' capacity to garner political backing for its cause. To conclude, ladies and gentlemen, given all these considerations, it is indeed important for the Philippines to ponder and carefully weigh these disadvantages against the potential benefits of going head-on against its neighbor China for the second time. Filing a case against China at the PCA again will be an imprudent and unwise move for the Philippines, which faces financial and economic challenges. The current Philippine government must weigh the potential drawbacks vis-a-vis financial costs, diplomatic implications, and other domestic priorities. Ultimately, the decision to pursue another case against China at the PCA should be pondered on carefully, considering the Philippines' long-term national interest and well-being. Note that the Philippines filing another international case against China carries political and economic cost. Rather than filing a case, it is more prudent and pragmatic for the Philippines to engage China diplomatically and negotiate to find a resolution without resorting to legal action. International litigation should be seen as a last resort when all dispute and conflict resolution avenues have been exhausted. The Philippines must weigh its long-term strategic goals, diplomatic objectives, and economic priorities to make an informed choice. Still, the best way forward for the Philippines is the path towards dialogue, negotiation, diplomacy, and regional cooperation as opposed to confrontation and lawfare tactics vis-a-vis China. Instead, the Philippines and China should pursue maritime cooperation, a critical and multifaceted aspect of international relations that encompasses collaboration, coordination, and partnership among countries in the domain of oceans and seas. Maritime cooperation between the two countries could play a pivotal role in addressing their conflict of interests and differences over the contested waters of the South China Sea, and it may offer greater opportunities that both sides could benefit tangibly. Ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues, in a rapidly changing world where the oceans and seas are critical to our shared future, maritime cooperation serves as a bridge connecting nations with common interests and responsibilities. It fosters mutual understanding, promotes peaceful coexistence, and empowers countries to collectively address the complex challenges and opportunities that our oceans present. By working together, nations can harness the vast potential of the maritime realm for the benefit of present and future generations while safeguarding the health and vitality of our global oceans. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention and a pleasant day to all. Good morning.
Thank you, Professor Ana Malintoy, for your insights and commentary. Before we move on, I'd like to remind everyone, in light of what we heard from Kamentong and Kado earlier, that the principle that should guide our discussions moving forward is that the president alone is the chief architect of foreign policy. His subordinates are teetering on the trying to subvert and inuunahan ng presidente. So let us remember that going forward. Next. I'd like to welcome Ms. Sas Rogando Sasot. She is a distinguished Filipino foreign policy analyst and geopolitics commentator. She is an IR scholar who learned in Manila, Hong Kong, The Hague, LA, and Maastricht. She earned her master's degree in international relations at Leiden University in the Netherlands. She is a PhD student in Beijing, and she specifically requested me to introduce her as a proud American colony traitor. Let us welcome Ms. Sas Rogando Sasot for opening statements.
Hello, can you hear me guys clearly?
Yes, we can hear you.
Saan ko ba pwede ipadala yung presentation ko or pwede ba akong bigyan ng
sa Zoom mismo. Yes,
paano
ma'am.
yan?
You can send it
share
sa
screen.
Zoom chat or share screen. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, share screen. Host disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay,
Naka-disabled ako sa screen.
Give
Hello
me a second.
everyone! Magandang umaga mula dito sa Beijing. Ako ang inyong favorite mouthpiece of Beijing in Beijing. Ana, nandiyan ka pa ba? Parang habang hinihintay pa natin yung hello.
Ms. Sas Rogando, I introduced you.
I'm here, Sas.
Ha?
I'm here. Andito ako.
Ay, si Lorraine pala nasa bahay. Akala ko nasa SMNI.
Si Lorraine nandyan. Kasama natin.
Okay na ako mag-share. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Ms. Sas.
Ano pala tayo? 1 million viewers pala tayo. Asa na yung... Wala pa. Wala pa akong permission.
Go ahead, Ms. Sas.
You are now the co-host. Okay. So, Ayan.
Yun. Yan.
Okay, nasabi na naman nilang lahat about dun sa issue ng coral reef, no? At kuning-kuning. Ang aking presentation po ay tungkol sa what the West wants, no? Pupunta tayo sa mas malawakang usapan kasi ang lahat ng nangyayaring ito ay sa ating mundo ay hindi po dahil gusto pong isalba ng West o ng Amerika ang mga coral reefs, no? Wala pong mangyayaring ganyan at hindi rin po nila isasalba or bubuhayin ang ating mga mangingisda. Ang problema kasi is hindi talaga natin natutunan ang ating kasaysayan. Ang bansang Amerika po ay nandito po sa ating sa lupain ng mga Pilipino, ng mga Pinoy mula 1898. 2023 na po. Mula 1898 hanggang 2023, hindi po nila tinulungan ang ating mga mangingisda na mag-industrialize, hindi po nila dinevelop ang ating bansa para mag-industrialize tayo. Dahil na tayo colony. Okay? Colony tayo. Sana ay bilang isang bansa na na-colonize, dapat talaga ini-educate natin ang ating mga kababayan kung paano ba ang logic ng colonialism, ng kolonyalismo. Kasi ito ay nakalimutan na ng ating mga kababayan sa kagustuhan na rin ng ating former colonizer na ito ay ating i-let go at i-forgive sila sa kanilang mga ginagawa kahit na pag-aaralan mo ang kanilang ginagawa ngayon sa Pilipinas, sa mundo, is bumabalik tayo unti-unti sa colonial era. So, ano ba ang gusto nila? Okay. Well, ngayon sinasabi nila gusto nilang ipalaganap ang demokrasya. Okay, kung naniniwala kayo na gusto nilang ipalaganap ang demokrasya ngayon sa mundo, kaya kailangan nilang dalhin ang kanilang mga warships sa malapit sa pampang ng iba't ibang bansa, parang naniwala ka na rin na ang mga Espanyol ay pumunta sa ating bansa para gawin tayong Kristiyano at ipaliwanag ang mabuting balita ng Diyos. Hindi po yan kung gusto nyo ganyan ang isipin ninyo ay wala naman pipigil. Pero mas magandang tanungin ay concerned ba talaga sila sa'yo? No? Kung sa tingin mo ay si Biden ay concerned sa'yo or si Ursula von Leyen, ang EU at US, para mo na rin sinabing concern ng Espanya sa sa ating komunidad doon nung pre-colonial times, kaya sila pumunta dito. So ano ang kanilang gusto? We have to go beyond what they are saying, okay? And to unpack it for what they really want. Okay? Ganito kasi nila pinapackage, no? Ang kanilang gusto. Ito yung sinabi ni US Vice President Kamala Harris noong siya ay nandiyan sa Pilipinas noong November 22, 2022 habang siya ay sakay ng ating Coast Guard ship. Sabi niya, to protect the economic vitality of these communities, to protect the ecosystems they rely on, and to protect lives and livelihoods, we must uphold international rules and norms. We must stand up for principles such as respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity, unimpeded lawful commerce, da-da-da-da-da. So, nilinyahan ko ang mga importante ditong mga phrases, no? Yung mga nakakapukaw damdamin, economic vitality, protect the ecosystem. So baka nga kaya pinaglalaban nila ang coral reefs dahil gusto nila i-protect ang ecosystem. Unimpeded lawful commerce at freedom of navigation in overflight. So i-cover ko lang yung ilan dito para mas marami tayong time sa question and answer. Unahin natin ang economic vitality, okay? Of course, ang tinutukay dito ni Kamala Harris na threat sa economic vitality, sa ecosystem, sa lawful commerce, freedom of navigation, overflight, ay China. Okay. Wala nang iba. So, puntahan natin ang issue ng economic vitality. No? So ang tanong, is economic vitality threatened in our region as the United States claim? Ito maganda itong i-compare itong Bangladesh at Pilipinas. No? Karamihan siguro sa atin dito ay meron ng isip noong 90s. Noong 90s, we look down on Bangladesh. We think that Bangladesh is so poor, there's just so much suffering there, etc. In 1990, ang ating GDP per PPP or Purchasing Power Parity ay 163.91 billion. Ang Bangladesh 105 billion. So, mas maliit ang kanilang PPP. 2022, ang Pilipinas 1.17 trillion, nag-improve naman, pero ang Bangladesh 1.27 trillion. So nagkaroon tayo ng reversal of fortune, mga mare at pare, mga nene at kuya, kung hindi nyo pa namamalayan, nag-reverse na po ang ating situation natin sa Bangladesh. Since 1990, ilang years ba since 1990? 10, 20, after 20 years. Congratulations, Bangladesh, no? Na-reverse nila ang kanilang fortune, pero tayo na yung mas maliit sa Bangladesh. So, kung ang economic vitality ay threatened sa ating region, bakit ang Bangladesh nagtatrine? Bakit ang economy ng Bangladesh is vital? Di ba? Can you imagine Bangladesh, no? We look down on Bangladesh. There was famine in Bangladesh. But now, the GDP, PPP, mga kababayan ng Bangladesh, ay mas mataas na sa Pilipinas, no? Let this be a wake-up call. So, ano ngayon ang threat sa economic vitality ng bansang Pilipinas? Is it China? Or maybe there is something else. Maybe they are using China as a boogeyman for us to look outside rather than inside our country to really know what we are actually doing wrong at kung sino talaga yung threat sa economic vitality ng ating bansa. Obviously, sa China, if you're gonna look at Bangladesh trade partners, no, they're mostly trading and forming partnership with their neighbors. So, China, India, I believe meron ding investments from Singapore, but they prioritize, makikita mo yung involvement ng kanilang mga neighbors. So, umangat ang ekonomiya ng Bangladesh, and Bangladesh was able to overtake us sometime in 2018 ata yan. So, 2019 or 2018, somewhere along that line. So, ibig sabihin, hindi threatened ng economic vitality as the United States claim. Okay. Meron pa akong isang example. Ito, mas malala to, no? So, ito, Vietnam, mas malapit sa atin, no? Noong 1990, bakit ano lang pala to, 163.91
Recording in
billion
progress.
163.91 billion tayo, 1990 GDP PPP. Ang Vietnam 79.23. Ang Vietnam ngayon 1.32 trillion. Ang Pilipinas 1.17 trillion. Tumaas naman tayo lahat, no? Pero mas naunahan tayo ng Vietnam, tumaas. And they were able to overtake us, Vietnam. At the same time as Bangladesh. So lahat ino-overtake tayo, mga kababayan. Habang tayo ay busy sa issue ng coral, ng reef, na I'm pretty sure a lot of Filipinos cannot point where it is in the map, or kung ano-ano pa na walang kilala, na wala talagang, you cannot connect what they are now talking about to the development of our country. No? It doesn't matter. Well, I'm ready to be proven wrong, but I would like the intellectuals, the American colony patriotic intellectuals, to show me a paper connecting concern for coral reef and economic development. Di ba? Ikaw ba, Ana, meron ka ba? Ano, nandiyan ka pa ba? Ana? Wala na si Ana.
I am here, dear. I am here.
So meron ka ba nabasa na ito? Mas mahabang panahon itong ginugulian sa development study kayo sa akin. May nabasa ka na bang academic paper linking coral reef and economic development?
Wala.
You know, alam naman, Ana, no, we're both academics. We would like to be proven wrong, no? That excites us, you know, when we're proven wrong. So next, okay, ang sabi ni Kamala Harris ng United States, lawful commerce. Daw, kailangan daw nating labanan ng pag-impede ng local commerce. Ngayon, this is connected to the freedom of navigation, no? Na sinasabi ng United States. Ngayon, inuulit-ulit na ng mga officials natin. Diyos ko, Lord, parang ilan ba sa inyo ang may property sa United States at takot ano law nila, CATSA, CATSA. Anyway, so lawful commerce daw, baka mai-impede sa ating region. So, kaya kailangan protektahan ang freedom of navigation. Okay. Okay, itong graphics nito, this comes from CSIS. Okay? Those who hindi nakakaalam sa CSIS, CSIS is an American think tank, and you know they receive funding from what's this defense sector. So this is just 2016 data. Pero just imagine, this was way back 2016 pa ito. Pero makikita natin na ang exports through the SCS, ibig sabihin ng main gumagamit ng South China Sea, ay China. Okay? 874 billion ng kanilang export ay dumadaloy sa South China Sea. Ang sunod dyan, South Korea, 249. We are a really minor player in terms of using the South China Sea as a commercial trade route, no? Ang trade lang natin na dumadaloy dyan is about 31 billion. Wala pang 100 billion US dollars. This was way back in 2016. So can you imagine how gano'n na ito nag-improve? So, bakit i-impede ng China yung commerce? No, ng mga military natin at ng DND, pati ni Bongbong, no, President, yung American colony President Bongbong Marcos. Logical thinking. Ako na gumagamit ng lugar ay dahil sa free flow of commerce dyan, yung mayaman ako, is gagambalain ko. Diyos niyo, Santissima Trinidad. Ganyan na ba kababang IQ ng mga Pilipino? Na hindi nila naintindihan nung ito ginagawa sa atin ng Amerika? Okay. Imagine, sabi ng CSIS, ito sa kanila mismo nagsabi, sila, Amerikano mismo nagsabi ito, hindi ako. I'm just reading it verbatim. Given the significance of the South China Sea for Chinese trade, Beijing may be more inclined to take steps to preserve the free flow of trade than it is to disrupt regional trade flows. Even under extreme hypothetical conditions, where Chinese capabilities expanded to the point where it was capable of letting its own commerce pass while stopping that of other countries, such a move would be risky. Long-term interference with shipping traffic would increase insurance premiums on commercial vessels and force shippers to consider more expensive trade routes. Okay. Ano daw ang magko-compel sa China na i-disrupt ang trade? Amerikano rin mismo nagsabi nito, Dire circumstances may compel China to take disruptive action, but this will come at a considerable financial cost to China, greatly degrade China's standing among other countries, and could precipitate an assertive response by outside powers. So mga hindi nakakaintindi, meron itong conditional clause. Sabi niya, dire circumstances may compel China to take disruptive action. So ano yung mga dire circumstances na pwedeng ma-encounter ng China sa South China Sea para siya ay magkaroon ng disruptive action? Ano ba mga kababayan? Ano ba sa tingin niyo pwedeng Ano bang dire circumstance para sa China, no? Okay. Eto yan, mga friendships. Okay? So, hindi ko na isa-isa yung sinabi ni Kamala Harris kasi nga, di ba sabi nila na commit one mistake and the rest is already tainted, no? So, ito, tatlo na yung ating dinibang na sinabi ni Vice President Kamala Harris. So, ano ang gusto ng West? This is something that everyone must know. Okay? In March 2023, the EU released a report on the 34 critical raw materials, 17 of which are strategic. Okay. China dominates 19 of them. 19. And in the other critical raw materials, it is a significant player. Okay? Kung wala kang access sa raw materials na ito, in the 21st century, you will be left out of industrialization. Okay, the next stage of industrialization will just be left out. Okay, so what the West want, the collective West, what they want in this century is the same thing that they wanted in the 1500s. It is the resources of developing countries. Why? Kasi Europe is poor, very poor in raw materials, really poor. The United States, they have, but they cannot provide, what Europe needs. Hindi rin ganun kalaking player itong United States when it comes to their critical raw materials. So these critical raw materials are in Asia, Latin America, Africa, and Middle East. They are in what we call in development studies global South. Okay? So ito may nakita akong magandang para editorial. Okay. Sabi nila Iran wants war. Russia is an aggressor. And China is a threat. Nakikita nyo ba yung mga pink na yan? Those are US military bases. What do they want? Do they want to spread democracy? Come on. They want the resources, no? Iran, one of the largest reserves in natural gas. Russia, natural gas and rare earth. China single-handedly dominates rare earth reserves and production. So China has a huge industrial capacity. It is the most complete industrial system in the world right now. No? So para ang China ngayon, this is like Germany in the opening of the 20th century. The West wants that. They don't want that because they would like to spread democracy or protect your coral reefs or protect your fishermen ability to fish. That's not how the world works, no? The West wants the natural resources, critical raw materials of the global South. Okay. This is my last statement para mas mahabang ating Q&A. Recently, I think today, no, may balita. Sabi ni Manalo, ni DFA, American Colony Foreign Affairs Secretary na si Manalo. Sabi niya, open daw ang Pilipinas for partnership with the United States for critical raw materials, mining, and production. Okay, so I hope people would study the colonial economic setup. To sum it up, ganito ang colonial setup, no? The West gets the raw materials of Asia, Latin America, Middle East, and Africa. They bring the raw materials to Europe, to the United States. Okay? They, add value, transform the raw materials, and then sell their products to us. So I hope that you would see the trade imbalance there, no? Na ikaw, you sell raw materials cheap, and then you would buy their finished product more expensive. And that's going to happen again if we're not gonna be careful. You know? Yung mga chika-chika nila na gusto nila paramihin yung value chain sa Pilipinas, you have to understand, no? All these different value chains, yung added value chains sa supply chain, a lot of them are in their countries. So do you really think that they will remove them in their countries and then transfer to the Philippines? Hindi nagkaroon sila ng internal stability, no, dahil maraming mawawalan ng trabaho sa kanila, sa kanilang mga lugar. So this is already the general wave, no, of the world. We are the West would like to go the world to go back to where it was before, and that is the time of colonization. Okay, they're not there to save the corals. They're not there to protect free flow of commerce. Paano ka bakit mo poprotektahan ito sa free flow of commerce? Hindi ka naman member nitong region na to. Saka kung impeded ang commerce dito, di lahat kami pahirap. Lahat kami pataas eh. Oh well, some countries, develop faster than us. This because, these countries like Vietnam, I love the foreign policy of Vietnam. Like Vietnam, they have a foreign policy fit for a multipolar world. Kaya pag titingnan mo yung mga investment, foreign direct investments ngayon ng Vietnam, you would see clearly that una, it's an Asian, it's an Asian-centric economy. Kasi the top investors in Vietnam, China, which includes, of course, the investment of its province Taiwan and the special administrative region of Hong Kong, South Korea, Singapore, and Japan. Yung United States nasa dulo pa eh. So can you imagine? Vietnam is trading with its neighbors. And because Vietnam is so good, in executing a policy, what if ang tawag nila is diversification of foreign and economic relations, its economy is developing fast. Okay? Tayo, our foreign policy is a foreign policy of an American colony. There's no difference with our foreign policy before and now. So if we continue doing this, we will be left out of the geo-economic order of the world, wherein the global south will band together in order to have greater control over their with their resources. In the 70s there was an OPEC, no, but it's centered on oil. I think the next OPEC would be an OPEC related to raw materials, because there's no other way, because the West is hungry for raw materials. If they don't get these raw materials, if they don't access this, if they don't defeat China militarily, they would be left out. And where are we in this equation? Are we part of the global south? Definitely. Are we part of the global north? A lot of our elite think that we are part of the global north. No, we are part of the global south. But because of our political and economic elite, they think that we're part of the global north. So, nakikisocial client tayo dyan sa global north. But we will never be part of the global north. No? Because hindi naman tayo former colonizers. Look at the G7. All of them are former colonizers except South Korea. Sinama na lang yung South Korea, no? Pero all of them are former imperialist countries. So to conclude, tigilan nyo na yan, no? My God, can you imagine? Ang dami pang discussion na nakalaan tungkol sa coral reef kaysa dito sa pag-discuss ng nangyayari ngayon sa mundo, which actually frames everything that's going on in different areas of the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mrs. Rogando Sasot, for your very important presentation on the colonized state of the country. Let us remember the words of Renato Constantino, that the true Filipino is a decolonized Filipino. Next, I'd like to welcome Dr. Lorraine Badoy. She is the former spokesperson of the NTF-LCAC, and she is known for standing up to the CPP and PANDF and their legal fronts and its neighbors.
Recording stopped.
Let us welcome Ms. Lorraine Badoy.
Hi, good
Recording
morning.
in progress.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I didn't know I was going to be included. I was just one of the listeners. But anyway, all I really want to say is the reason I'm here is because I recognize that this is a highly complicated issue, and I feel so ignorant about it, and therefore very easy to manipulate. And I really sense that there are a lot of people who want to, a lot of puppet masters that I can sense. So thank you so much for coming up with this forum, where again I learned so much. So that's all I have to say. Actually, I'm still, and I need to ponder on all of this kasi. Thank you, Sas and everybody, and Anna.
Thank you, Miss Lorraine Badoy. We appreciate what you have said here. I'd like to move on to the Q&A for our media friends and everyone who wants to ask a question. If you have any questions, please raise your hand. Please introduce yourself, which media you are from. Anyone may ask any questions. All right, I'd like to read the comment from our Zoom here from Mr. Tim Navarro. He says, if you follow US media, you will notice that the verbiage used by US politicians is very broad, generic, and geopolitically and contemporarily colorful in order to catch the attention of its intended audiences. Specifically, the words used are intended to help win the hearts and minds of said target audiences in order to manufacture and shape consent. Admittedly, the US is good at this. I'd like to invite Kamentong and Orcado to give their insights on these comments. From the IDSI Center, they say, everyone knows China is known to pay higher, impose less conditions when doing business than the West. The Filipinos got less than 10% of profits from Malampaya gas deal. 90% goes to US and UK energy companies, while China was willing to give 60% in favor of the Philippines. But we have some forces in our government who blocked the deal with China, and that is referring to the Supreme Court. From another comment here from Mr. Gilberto Joaquin, that's because our government's officials starting with the president are all beholden to the Americans. They want the blood money the Americans will give them. Now, before we read any further, I'd like to give appreciation to the statement of President Marcos Jr. issued a few days ago, where he instructed a civilization of the Ayungin approach. He called for no non-military forces, only the Coast Guard to Coast Guard, and not any Navy is only there to assist. And I'd like to appreciate what Senator Robin Padilla has said in the Senate hearing a week or so ago, that it's a universally accepted principle and concept that the Coast Guard of a country is civilian in nature, not military. Kamentong would like to say a few words.
Yeah, if I may add to that point about the propaganda from the Western powers and from the United States itself, let me just educate our audience a bit that the West really developed the West has really developed propaganda as an art for many, many years now. In fact, almost 100 years. It's also in connection with the psychology of Carl Jung, which was passed on to Edward Bernays, who developed the mass psychology propaganda movement, and actually advertising. There is also a British institute, Tavistock Institute, that focused on creating propaganda. That's why First World War, Second World War, and so on, propaganda was a very, very key instrument. China, of course, does not compete on the same level because China does not intervene in internal affairs and politics of any country. So they have certain limits. So it's up to the population and intellectuals of each country, each nation, to stand up for the truth and the facts about these issues that the West has been pushing, the lies that the West have been pushing on the rest of the world. I think we have seen those lies in Ukraine, how the Western media in the US has portrayed the Ukrainian fight as a winning fight, but now we see that everything is collapsing for the armed forces of Ukraine, AFU. But initially, everybody thought Russia would be vanquished in a few months, but the reverse is true. The same in Afghanistan, the same in Vietnam, name it, no? The Americans in reality are often, if not always, losing, but yet their media campaign has always been very successful in fooling many of the people for most of the time, but of course, not all of the time. Kaado, you have anything to add?
I was impressed when Sas Rogando Sasot started comparing us to Bangladesh. Understandably, we have been compared to Vietnam, and I have written at least 3 columns comparing us to Indonesia because the rise of Indonesia is just as impressive as the rise of China. Why? Because they are in partnership very quietly. I was talking with some experts a few days ago, and it just dawned on me that Filipinos love to dabble on political diplomacy. Pagdating po sa political diplomacy, siguro lalagay ko na 90% tayo. Magagaling tayong magpaikot-ikot dahil karamihan sa ating mga nasa Kongreso ay puro mga abogado. So kanya-kanyang interpretasyon ng mga salita, kanya-kanyang interpretasyon ng mga polisiya. Sa isang bagay lang naman nagkakasundo, pera sa bulsa. So ang konsepto natin ng ekonomiya ay sa pera sa bulsa ng mga naghaharing uri, pera sa bulsa ng mga tao sa gobyerno. Ang gobyerno ay naging negosyo na. Bumalik na ang dinastiya ng mga Marcos, Presidente Marcos, may Senador Marcos, may Gobernador Marcos, marami ng Congressman Marcos, at kung hindi man Marcos, Romualdez, Ambassador, Speaker sa House. Hindi ko lang malaman kung saan nanggaling si Subiri. Dahil wala naman talagang alam ito kundi maging one of the Spice Boys. Pero alam ko mas matalino sa kanya si Mike Defensor. Bakit Bangladesh? Pati yung mga suot natin, Bangladesh. Dahil may 2 dekada na po na iniwanan na ng China ang mga low-end labor. At ito ay slowly downstream na niya sa Indochina Peninsula. Nakinabang dyan ang mga taga-Myanmar, nakinabang dyan taga-Bangladesh, nakinabang dyan ang mga taga-Laos, Cambodia. Kaya masiglang-masigla ang kanilang ekonomiya habang ang China ay gumagawa ng perokaril mula sa Kunming, China, pababa sa Indonesia at ito'y bababa ng Thailand, sa kaliwa at sa kanan na ay Vietnam, hanggang makarating sa Singapore. And from Singapore, napakadali nang ikonekta ng maritime component sa Jakarta. Ano nangyari sa Pilipinas? We are supposed to be the most geopolitically, strategically located. Naiwan tayo ng biyahe dahil sa sobrang political diplomacy. So I was discussing it with Kamentong earlier on. Sabi ko, ang hirap kasi sa Department of Foreign Affairs natin, napaka-bobo pagdating sa development diplomacy. And I would like to honor Secretary Pascual. Dahil walang kaimik-imik, nagkaroon tayo ng isang expo participation sa Nanning, China. At magtatatlo-4 na araw pa lang, ubos na yung mga binibenta ng ating mga negosyanteng Pilipino doon. At nakakalam yata sila ng half a billion pesos of merchandise sales at investment opportunities. Samantalang pinag-uusapan dito, ay bakit daw pumapayag si Jay Batumbakal na gumamit ang Amerika ng Poseidon? Bakit daw siya pumapayag? Dahil daw sa Mutual Defense Treaty. Ang layo ng sagot. Anong pakialam ng Mutual Defense Treaty sa mga problema natin sa South China Sea? Development diplomacy para po sa mga sikmura ng mas nakararaming Pilipino na kailangan kumain ng 3 beses sa isang araw. Wala tayong makukuha dyan. Hanggat ang ating mga government officials ay nangangarap na meron tayong makukuha sa South China Sea, maski walang permiso ang mga Chino, fantastic na po yan. Kailangan natin diplomasya, hindi patentero. Dahil ang patentero po nauuwi sa tumbang preso. So masasabi ko lamang ay nasaan ang mga economists natin? Ano lang yan ang mga eskwela? Ang mamahal ng matrikula. Alam nyo ba mga kabansa, wala pa tayong mandatory elementary education. Alam nyo ba yun? So ibalik natin ang ating atensyon sa economic development at palabas sa ating bansa sa development diplomacy. Diyan natin mapagdudugtong-dugtong ang sinabi ni Sas Rogando Sasot. At diyan tayo mapipigilan natin ang mga pagiging tagapayong lamang ng mga Amerikano. Kung hindi tayo aalis dyan, wala pong mangyayari.
Before everything else, I'd just like to announce
Ako
for
naman.
the...
Ako din.
Yeah, sandali. Babalik tayo dyan. No? For the print media, the Asian Century Philippines Institute also publishes books. So today we have 2 books for the print media. Print media, but anyway, the photographers have left. So mainly print media and then followed by broadcast media and priorities. We have 20 books. One book by Mauro Samonte, China, The Way, the Truth, and the Life. And the other book by Ado Paglinawan, which is the Poverty of Power and the Power of Poverty. They have prepared it already, so you can pick it up after the session. So I think there are some other comments that should be read.
Yeah, I'd like to read this question from Mr. Algalang. This question, anyone can answer this one. Has anyone presented a comprehensive study with evidence on how the corals disappeared over the years and who really did it? Ms. Rogando Sasso, would you like to answer this question?
My God, Diyos ko Lord. You know what? Let's forget about the corals. There's now a technology in order to regrow corals. China is already doing it. No? So, ay, mahina ba ang audio ko? Is it still? Narinig niyo ba ako?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Let's forget about it. There's already a technology to regrow corals. No, what we should be discussing are not corals, but on how to industrialize our fishing sector and to move kasi ganito pa ang fishing sector natin, no? Mangingisda, huhuli ng fresh isda, ibibenta sa wet market. Ganyan pa ang ating structure ng ating fish market. My God, we have to move past that. Hindi yayaman ang mga mangingisda natin dyan sa ganyang sistema. You know, in Europe, no, ang mga fresh fish na ganyan, it's seldom being sold. Kasi nga very, very, very expensive because nga, you know, hindi ganun kahaba ang shelf life ng fresh fish. Ang ano na ngayon nila is mga nakapack na, nakabreaded na, para yung mga tao, bibili ng ganon, isasalang na lang nila, hindi na nila kailangang lagdagan pa ng recados. Ganun na ang sistema ngayon. Diyos ko Lord, corals pa rin ang pinag-uusapan natin. There is now a technology in order to regrow corals. So, and China has been planting corals all over the South China Sea since 2019. No? I think around 200,000 hectares of land. I would like to comment lang about some things. No? Pwede pa ba ako mag-share ng screen? Okay.
Sure.
Ito, I think you can remember, no? Nung the past few years si President Duterte, ano tayo nung debt trap, no? Chinese debt trap, ang padalas ginagamit is yung Sri Lanka. Okay. So to give you a short overview of what happened, Sri Lanka took a loan from China to build its ports, no? Yung Hambantota International, sa Hambantota. Okay. Ngayon, you have to understand how China does this. China doesn't require extensive feasibility study, its loans and etc. do not have any political conditions. Okay, I am pretty sure, no. Anna can correct me if I'm wrong here, no. The main core value of Chinese development help, it's self-reliance. Self-reliance, no? Kasi that work for them. So kung ikaw magtitake ka ng loan sa China or you're gonna do an investment, they would like you to be self-reliant. No, hindi sila they would not go through all those bureaucratic steps ng grabing feasibility study or magre-require sila ng structural adjustment sa iyong gobyerno, sa iyong ekonomiya in order for you to be able to avail that loan. China doesn't do that. China's core development value is self-reliance. And I know that because, my God, I've only been here for a month. Can you imagine my Chinese professor being asked by my African schoolmates? Tinatanong siya, ano bang gagawin namin? Ganyan, sa aming bansa, etc. And the professor said, well, you cannot use China as a model. You can learn from everyone, but you have to find your own path and you must know how to stand with your own 2 feet. So ganyan yan. So dito sa Sri Lanka, what happened was Sri Lanka wasn't able to manage well, no, the port. Okay. Of course, ang utang, mababayaran mo to dahil nag-generate ng revenue yung project na kung saan doon mo nilagay yung utang. This is a very simple business concept, no? The problem with Sri Lanka, it's beset with corruption and a lot of issues na mismanaged. So what did China do? No? Ang balita, ang ginawa ng China, China took over the port. Ganito talaga ang kanilang intention. Ibabaon nila sa utang yung bansa, tapos iti-take over nila. Actually, what China did is actually more humane and makes more sense than, for example, like what World Bank, etc., were doing. No? So what did China do? So they took a 70% stake at the Hambatonta port. 70%. So 70% sa Chinese sa CMPH, and then 30% sa Sri Lanka. And that is what now you call an equity thing. Okay. Ipa-finance namin yung pagbayad nyo ng debt, but we want 70% equity. And then you're gonna have 30% dividend. I think this is a very simple business concept. Itong nangyayaring ito. So that's actually a good deal, no? And in 2021, and this was not reported by anyone in mainstream media, etc. The port managed by China is actually allowing Sri Lanka to earn dividend in 2020 alone, and this is only interim profit is 1 billion Sri Lankan rupees dividend. So saan nakita na baon ka sa utang, nasa debt trap ka, tumatanggap ka ng dividend? My God, hello business. Kita mo, isa sa mga nagpapalaganap ng ganyang konsepto, yung American colony patriotic intellectual sa higayan. Day in, day out na lang halos siya, death trap Sri Lanka. But did he report that Sri Lanka Port Authority is actually receiving dividend? Of course not. So, yung sinasabi ni Aka na your foreign policy should be development-oriented. That is actually the correct foreign policy for the Philippines. Let us remind the Filipinos, the mainstream media, remind the Filipinos that we are a developing country. Your foreign policy should be related to your economic status. Because your economy will determine everything. Okay. Poor economy, poor military, poor education, poor health. The directionality doesn't work the other way. No? Kailangan mo maging strong ang military mo para maging strong ang economy mo. You need money for all of these things. You need development. No? And this is something na kailangan ipalaganap at idikdik sa utak ng bawat Pilipino na kailangan mong paunlarin ng iyong ekonomiya. At paano mo gagawin yan? Look, study Bangladesh, study Vietnam, study all these things. China is not the China is no longer the class, not acting like the West so far. No? Thank God, no? Na ang gagawin ng the West, they will go to their country, take your resources, leave and leave your countries maldeveloped. Just look at our military. 1951, they promised to modernize our military. 2023 na mga friends. Ang pinag-usapan pa rin natin, modernization of our military, that's 70 years. We're doing it wrong, no? How many more years would we wait before we realize that maybe we actually not doing things right? And I think this is the moment that we should wake up. But if we cannot wake up yet, maybe there is another 70 years for us to wait for. And then at that time, North Korea will already surpass our economy. And I'm not kidding that North Korea will one day surpass our economy. It has a advanced nuclear weapons technology, mga friends. If you have that, your industrial sector is so high up there. So yun lang. Gusto mo salita ni Austin. Tatahimik
okay.
na si Austin.
Daniel,
Go ahead,
let me
ma'am.
speak quickly.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Before Austin, okay? Before Austin, okay?
Go ahead, ma'am.
Okay. I actually support what Sas is saying. I am at the moment with people from different parts of the world, and I even have a colleague right now. I'm attending an international conference on development, human rights, and maritime cooperation. And I was actually conversing with a Sri Lankan who was a former ambassador to Europe. And she was telling me right in front of my face that the death trap ng Sri Lanka na sinasabi is just a propaganda by the United States and the Western Alliance. Propaganda yan at mas may malalim na kwento dyan that it includes political instability na nangyayari sa Sri Lanka. And Sri Lanka is also actually a victim, like the Philippines, sa ginagawa ng United States ng pagkukontrol at pagkakaroon ng military alliances, military trainings and all of this, na tulad ng Pilipinas. It's a big problem also in Sri Lanka right now. Many of my colleagues right now here coming from Latin America, Asia, Africa are actually discussing these issues that we're discussing. And they even ask me, why is it that the Philippines is not able to distance itself from the United States? We should have ang sinasabi nga nila sa akin, you should have a balanced foreign policy or an independent foreign policy. And our focus should be economic development and progress. Hindi yung puro military. Kasi ang sinasabi nga sa akin ng mga colleagues ko dito, pag nagkarampikan, nagkaroon ng gera, which is the plan of the United States, kasi the whole capitalist system is the whole system of capitalism, especially in the United States, is collapsing. And that's a reality. Kailangan kasi pag-aralan ng mga Pilipino din kung ano nangyayari sa West, sa sa Western Europe, and even America, para maintindihan kung bakit ang mga actions ng Amerika ay ganito. At may mga countries silang ginagamit as proxy. Sri Lanka is even one. And even the Philippines, of course, is one. So ang sinasabi natin is, ang current administration really has to be mindful of the foreign policy that we have right now. Kasi at the end of the day, kapag nagkalantikan, nagkaroon ng gera, ang mga Amerikano ay lalayas lang ng Pilipinas, ang may iwan mga Pilipino at siyang magsasuffer. That's even one possibility. The other one is economic. Ang focus ng mundo, especially ng Global South, is economic progress and development. So dapat siguro ang Pilipinas, instead of putting too much emphasis at saka yung katsikahan tungkol dyan sa mga Coast Guard na sinasabi ng coral reefs and all of these things, we probably should focus on economics. No? At saka when we talk about maritime issues, hindi pwedeng Pilipinas lang yan. Kasi hindi lang naman Pilipinas ang involved sa South China Sea or even the bigger seas. It involves other countries. The way forward to that is responding to such kind of environmental issue is maritime cooperation. China is willing. Ang problema sa Pilipinas, parang feeling mo ang laki-laking bansa ay ang liit naman na ayaw pa ng lahat ng possible negotiation and discussion on these issues. Kailangan magkaroon ng shift in the mindset of Filipinos. Alam mo yun, parang isip na part tayo ng West na hindi naman tayo part ng West. We are part of the Global South. We are a developing country and we should never forget that. Now, what is the important right now? What's the most important for us? For the Philippines, we need to focus on economic development. Kasi lahat yan magpa-follow. When you are progressive, when you have the money, when you are economically developed, lahat yan, kahit pagpupondo ng pag-modernize ng AFP natin, kaya natin kasi may pera tayo. And we can stand independently. At saka, hindi mo kailangan ng ibang bansa para i-finance mga gusto mong i-improve sa bansa mo. Ang problema, they're always what? Dependent. Why do we want to be dependent on other countries when we can stand on our own two feet? And at the same time, we can negotiate and we can have good relations with all countries without creating an enemy. Yun yung sinasabi ko lagi. Bakit ba ang colonial mentality kahit kailan hindi pa natanggal sa Pilipinas? I think we need to have that kind of, parang i-re-educate ang mga Pilipino, lalo na yung mga kabataan ngayon. The Philippines should stand on its own two feet at maiwasan na maging parang yung mendicancy mentality, yung colonial mentality.
We have, excuse me, ma'am.
No, this is just a quick intervention right now because I'm doing multitask. I'm attending the media forum, but at the same time, I'm also attending an international conference. So thank you so much and good luck to my colleagues in the Philippines for having this media forum. Of course, I will always be there to support the cause. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ana Malindog Uy. We have 10 minutes left. I'd like to invite Mr. Austin Ong from the IDEA Integrated Development Studies Institute. He's a geopolitical expert to say a few words.
Thank you, Daniel. Magandang tanghali. They saved me for lunch. In the future, we'll have lunch together. Yung mga sinabi ng mga eksperto natin mahalaga, no? Bibigyan natin ng katumbasan o ng specific example ang nangyayari sa bansa, sa mga kapitbahay natin. Yung sinasabi natin kaibigan natin ng Amerika, after ng G20, itong si Biden pumunta ng Vietnam. Itong si Biden di pa pumupunta ng Manila yata, no? If correct me if I'm wrong. Pero sumama kay Vietnam, turned down US military base presence, but Vietnam is getting the top US executives from SpaceX, Netflix, 50 or so top US companies joined Biden's trip to Vietnam. How many of these US companies visited Manila kung talagang tutulungan nila tayo? Number one. No? Number two, yung sinabi ni Kaado at ni Professor Sas, yung Pilipinas, hindi lang we're focusing on the West Philippine Sea issue. Ang talagang biktima or talagang talo dyan ay ang taong bayan. Ang Indonesia just opened the first high-speed train connecting the capital to the provinces. Yung Cambodia has over 300 plus kilometers of new highways connecting the capital to the provinces. Vietnam's first metro rail, Hanoi sa metro rail is all from the help of China. Yung Laos na 6 million people, landlocked country, walang pumapansin dyan. Ngayon, meron siyang Laos-China train. According to the Laos ambassador, 11 million people are using that train, and Thailand, Malaysia wants to connect with, and even Singapore and Indonesia want to connect to Laos to access the China market. So hindi lang tayo napapabobo, napapatanga dito sa pag-usapan natin, importante i-manage natin diplomatically. Pero nakakababala, nakakatakot na bakit ito lang ang nakapokus natin. So may mga nagtanong kanina kung ano mga pwede nating maitulong. No? Ang mga siguro suggestion ay yung mga professors natin, mga universities natin, dapat imbita yung mga eksperto natin, i-share natin itong mga forum ng Asian Century Philippines at ibigay nating talakayin natin ang mga ganitong kwento sa mga, hindi lang sa taong bayan, pero sa mga estudyante rin natin. Maraming salamat.
Thank you, Mr. Austin Ong. I'm inviting our panelists to give short closing statements. Go ahead.
It's only 6 minutes to 12:30, no? So hindi na tayo magtatagal. I'd just like to remind the print media and the rest na meron tayong libro. Meron tayong libro po ng ating mga authors. If you want to dig in deeper. By the way, in the future Saturdays, we will have regular Saturdays seminars, symposium, and media forum from here on. But we have this place. We also have a place in Mega Plaza, Cityland, Ortigas, EDSA, madali din puntahan ng MRT. And we will conduct regular seminars. We will have special seminars for students, political science, political economy, economics, and we will issue certificates of attendance to students. So yan po ang mga plano natin para matulungan ang kamulatan po ng bayan po natin.
Kado, go ahead.
Okay, it's been a productive morning. And just as a segue to what Austin and Sasot were saying, and also Anna, I have papers about the development of our fishing industry. Tayo po ay nasa basnig technology pa rin. Hindi nalalayo doon sa balanghay ng ating mga ninuno. Tapos pag nakakakita tayo ng fishing boat ng China, ang tingin natin milisya. Sobrang ang Malaysia ng mga propagandists. Well, what I'm saying is this: there are enough materials among Filipino authors. We don't have a deep sea fishing industry. And yet, look at our archipelago. Nakikipag-away tayo dito sa West Philippine Sea, Kulu. Bukas na bukas yung kanan natin, wala naman tayong ginagawa. Yung ilalim natin, wala tayong ginagawa. Yung Visayas Sea at saka Sulu Sea, dinidinamita at sinascianide pa natin. Alam po ninyo, noong sometime in 1990, the late Alan Kimpo and I started a 500 square meter mangrove plantation. Maliit lang, 500 square meter. I'm happy to report to you that today it is almost 300 hectares already, and is a tourist spot as well as a reservation and a protection area in Aklan. Everything starts small. Dinadala tayo sa kaguluhan ng ating mga lideres. It is about time we say, tama na, sobra na, lumayas na kayo dyan. It's about time that we resolve to start choosing responsible people for our government. Let us stop romancing the dynasties and all the other things that bring us down. Development po is the way of the future. Naiiwanan na tayo ng mga maliliit na bansa na nakapaligid sa atin. And so, kung hindi pa tayo gigising, natikman na natin, despite the COVID, ang convenient life. Bumalik na naman tayo sa basura. James Fallows should not be proven correct when he said that we have a warped culture. Hindi ako papayag. Kaya let us not prove it with the kind of senators, congressmen, and people in the executive department that we have now. It's about time we say, tama na, sobra na. Kailangan ng mabuhay ng bansang Pilipino.
Thank you, Kado. Let's invite Professor Ana Malindog Uy for her short closing statements. Oh, she's not here. Okay,
Tapos na siya.
Ms. Astro Gandosaso, please give a short closing statement po. Thank you.
Yes. You know, it's sad to say this, but I will have to say it because I am an American colony traitor. We are the only formerly colonized country in Southeast Asia that is still thinking that its former colony is going to save it. Indonesia, do you see Indonesia inviting back the Dutch in order for it to defend itself and improve its economy? Do you see the Vietnamese inviting back the French in order to help itself develop, etc.? Or Malaysia, or Singapore, for instance, or Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia. So we are still in the colonial mindset because we cannot think of a separate destiny from our former colonizer. And this is saddening. No, this is saddening. This is the triumph of the recolonization of the Philippines. You know, the Vietnam's foreign policy. Itong kanilang foreign policy, very simple. Foreign policy of independence, self-reliance, and diversification of external relations. Parang kinopya ata sa akin ito ng Vietnam. Sinulat ko. Sinulat akong ganito dati na recommend akong foreign policy natin panahon ni PRRD. Can you imagine independence, self-reliance, and diversification of external relations? Can you, a Filipino, believe that we can have a foreign policy of self-reliance? If you cannot believe that we can have it 100%, you are still in a colonial mindset. That's why the first thing that you should do right now is to understand our current condition, which is a colonial condition, and free yourself from it. You must be able to imagine a self-reliant, independent, and a country that has a diverse external relations at this moment. If you cannot do it at this moment, you are still held hostage by colonialism. Yun lang po. Thank you.
Of a colonial mentality, and let us be self-reliant. Once again, thank you to all of our panelists, Kamentong, Kado, Ms. Sorgando Saso, Professor Ana Balindog Uy. Exercises like these are very important. Thank you again to our audience here and our media friends and everyone joining us via Zoom. I hope you're able to join our regular forums next Saturday. Let us remember that the South China dispute, like the President Marcos said, is a gray area, and we need to have this open discussions in this, and everyone is welcome to ask any questions. And we are not afraid because we have the truth on our side. Have a blessed day. Thank you very much.
issue. Ayon sa opisyal, wala na niyang natira sa corals ng Razul Reef. Ngunit nakikipag-ugnayan na sila sa mga eksperto upang matiyak.
If you're going to ask me kung meron ba tayong naaktuhan na Chinese maritime militia vessels na pinapatay nila ang coral, whatever activities na ginagawa nila dyan, we don't have any. But in terms of circumstances, that's the only thing we are sure for now. Na nung panahon na tumambay sila dyan, right after that, when we did the underwater survey, ito yung ating nakita.
The issue. Ayon sa opisyal, wala na niyang natira sa corals ng Razul Reef. Ngunit nakikipag-ugnayan na sila sa mga eksperto upang matiyak.
If you're going to ask me kung meron ba tayong naaktuhan na Chinese maritime militia vessels na pinapatay nila ang coral, whatever activities na ginagawa nila dyan, we don't have any. But in terms of circumstances, that's the only thing we are sure for now. Na nung panahon na tumambay sila dyan, right after that, when we did the underwater survey, ito yung ating nakita.
The issue.